I wanted to first of all thank our sponsors for the event today, our mayor's event. And as you can see up here, we have, we're at the next slide, there we go. We have Diamond Residential Mortgage, and I know Paul Diamond is here. Where are you, Paul? There he is back there. Thank you, Paul. We have Melichar Architects, Diana. There she is, right here. DiVinci Painters couldn't join us today. LifeWorking couldn't be here with us unless somebody came in. All right. And Lake Forest Bank and Trust, Steve Malota. There he is. Anyway, we couldn't be more grateful for the support of all of you. We are a membership association, and having sponsorships like this is extraordinary. We are going to have the head of the Native American Chamber of the state of Illinois, and also the head of the Mitchell Museum, a Native American Museum in Evanston. Extraordinary people and extraordinary stories. It's wonderful for us to learn the business perspective, not only the cultural perspective. But as far as the cultural perspective is concerned, the next 2 days, under Susan's careful guidance, there's been a group pulled together that is going to do another showcase, and this will be at the Westlake Forest train station. It will be a 2-day showcase of Native American artisans, crafts, and music. And I think food too, right? And food as well. So make sure that's on your schedule. You'll be hearing more about it. We are going to have today our 2 mayors who have been standing patiently by while I've been talking here. And I wanted to introduce them while they take their places up on their chairs. The first one is Village President Regis Charlot, who has been the president of Lake Bluff's Village Board for the past 2 years, and prior to that served as village trustee for 2 more years. Regis is an innovator, entrepreneur, and community leader with 30 years of experience leading organizations through growth and change. Today, Regis leads a startup focused on retail rental operations as a service. An active participant around Lake Bluff, he is also board member for the Lake Bluff Yacht Club and part of Lake Bluff Scout Troop 42, serving as assistant scoutmaster and treasurer. Together with his wife Leanne, Regis has raised daughter Emma and son Tad through Lake Bluff schools and now Lake Forest High School. And you're likely to see him running, biking, sailing, and enjoying the natural environment of the beautiful village of Lake Bluff. And our mayor from Lake Forest, George Pandaleon. George was sworn into office as mayor of Lake Forest on Monday, May 20th, 2019. Mr. Pandaleon earned a Master of Business Administration degree from Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management and a Bachelor of Arts degree from Kenyon. He is former board member of the National Association of Real Estate Investment Managers. He is also an active member of the Pension Real Estate Association, the International Council of Shopping Centers, the Urban Land Institute, and holds an FINRA Series 65 securities license. He has served Lake Forest in a variety of roles for nearly 30 years, including 6 years on the Zoning Board of Appeals, 6 years on the Plan Commission, and he later served as Second Ward Alderman from 2011 to 17, and as the city's Finance Committee Chairman during that same period. And while on City Council as an Alderman, he served as the city's Property and Public Lands Committee Personnel, Compensation and Administration Committee, and Audit Committee. Honoring his continuing long-term service to the city, George was the recipient of the Lawrence Temple Community Service Award, the highest civic honor bestowed on a Lake Forest citizen. Gentlemen, welcome this morning, and please take your seats. So this morning, there are a series of topics that are going to be covered by our guests. And this is going to be an opportunity for us to hear all of the latest. And if I can turn on my iPad here, we'll be in good shape. There we go. But we'll be able to hear all the latest on the following subjects: economic development, public safety, infrastructure, finances and budget, residential real estate, events, and then we will offer the opportunity for you to ask questions. So without any further ado, we will start with community and economic development. And if we can start with Mayor Pandaleon.
Thank you, Joanna. Welcome, everybody. What a beautiful week. What a beautiful day. I guess the weekend is supposed to be just as nice, so enjoy it before the snow flies. It's coming. Just great to have the opportunity to be in a room full of all these neighbors and friends. It's just seems like such a long time ago that we were able to do this last. And it's I think we did this last year, but it was a bit smaller group. So anyway, so we'll start off with just a quick overview of what's happening in the city. It's an ill wind that blows nobody good. COVID turned out to be a really, really good thing for Lake Forest in many ways. Obviously, COVID itself was not so great, but it really transformed our whole environment. I remember answering questions when I was being considered for mayor about what I thought needed to be done around here, and I said, well, there are really two objectives for the next couple of years. One was to make sure that our new city manager got situated well, and I think that's certainly proven itself to be a success. Jason's doing a great job, and he's had a great staff that he's made even better. But most importantly, the real estate market in this town had been in the doldrums for about a decade, and I said, we'd like to see if we could find something to do to kind of juice up the real estate market a little bit. Well, I'm taking full credit. So we have had a number of, as most of you know, we've had a number of new restaurants open up. We've had the Forrester Hotel open up with very strong performance. Le Colonial, we've got Sophia Steak is actually having their sort of grand opening party tomorrow, and they'll be opening next week. Duffers is on the way. We have 2 new restaurants on the west side, the Everett Farm and the Station. It's really been, and then we've had, in a town of a little over 7,000 households, we've had, I don't know, there's an argument about this, but I'm saying that we have over 1,300 new neighbors in the last 2+ years, which on a percentage basis is a huge influx of new residents. And it's important that we engage those people. I'm seeing a lot of strollers being pushed around in my neighborhood. That didn't take place for a long time, but it's great. And a number of people that I know have been able to make personal moves and get out from under housing situations that weren't ideal for them. And it's just been, and I think a number of you in the room here have probably benefited from this as well, both personally and professionally. So we have, really the next thing on the agenda is we have a task force, a resident task force that is being run by Randy Tack that is looking at our central business district and looking at opportunities and challenges that we have. We continue to struggle, frankly, with getting different kinds of housing units, whether it's condominiums, apartments. There's virtually no rental stock in this town. Anybody who's tried to rent anything or knows anybody who's tried to rent anything would be able to confirm that. There's no inventory, I should say, and there's a very small stock, and it needs. I personally think that needs to improve. And then we have really right in the immediate neighborhood where we're sitting right now is an enormous amount of underutilized land, and it kind of, you can go by it pretty easily and not recognize it, but because along Deer Path it looks like everything's full, but right behind those buildings is a lot of underutilized land, a lot of parking lots and things that I think in the next cycle are going to get developed, and it's our job to figure out how to do that in a way that's going to really benefit Lake Forest for the long run. The old office uses are really no longer relevant, and they need to be rethought. And so that group is working on that. I think we'll get a final report from them sometime later this year, and then we'll have to look at how we can modify our comprehensive plan to accommodate some of the opportunities that are out there. So I'm going to hand it off to Regis at this point and let him talk about similar issues and opportunities in Lake Bluff.
So thank you for being here today. The concern in our village has been economic development. It has been at the forefront of our concerns. How can we sustain our current business community? How can we expand on our community? And how can we make business easier in Lake Bluff? To that effect, we created a business advisory group as a subgroup to basically the Chamber of Commerce to have direct feedback to how can we can basically expand our community on a business level. Real estate has been also central to our concerns. You might have noticed a reset to Stonebridge. We are expanding our housing types diversification. We have ADUs where we can have more occupancy in our town. We have readdressed Block 2 in our town. Block 2 is Scranton between Oak and Walnut, and we're now looking at basically the space in front of the green, that is Block 1. How can we do a better space? You will see that you might have noticed Lake Bluff with a lot of events. How can we make our city better for hosting events? Lake Bluff has a tremendous historical value to residents. How can we make it better? How can we retain the charm of Lake Bluff? And to that effect, we have a new historic preservation regulation for our village. And I will be specific on that. That reservation was to preserve, promote, maintain, and enhance the village historic resource and character. And it was also to protect, to maintain and improve the property value of our village. So not only do we want Lake Bluff to stay the way it is, but we also want more people to enjoy it, and we want the value to be retained for the current residents. We also will have activity on our beach from a business development standpoint. The North Shore Water Reclamation District will build a basin to better address, I should say, our sanitary water. So you will see the south side of the beach in Lake Bluff to be basically out of business for our residents for the next 18 months. So no Lake Bluff Yacht Club, for example, no sailing activities and so on in Lake Bluff. We are a tree community. Okay, trees are important to us. Unfortunately, we have been losing a lot of trees in Lake Bluff, to the order of about 50 trees a year. Large trees on the village ways. We are now planting 100 trees a year. Okay, and we are doing that along with residents having the ability to ask for trees for themselves in front of their yards. It's important to us. This is part of our charm. Green Bay has been also our concern. We will improve the crossing in front of the elementary school. It's actually a very dangerous crossing. I'm a runner, and I've crossed that many times, and many times people have not stopped, and I'm a fully grown man, and I cannot imagine how 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds can cross that going to the elementary school. You will see more, but we are basically working at improving our community next.
Now we'll move to the topic of public safety.
Yeah, this is on sort of everybody's mind after what happened last summer in Highland Park. And I guess while we had a little bit of a downturn in attendance, the Lake Forest Day Parade went off without a hitch. And, you know, I'm not sure how many of you realize how closely our police and fire personnel work with Highland Park, but they were very deeply involved in the whole aftermath, and it affected them in a big way. You may not realize, but that what my wife thinks is a Pulitzer Prize winning photograph of the police officer walking down the street that was on the front page of every newspaper on July 5th across the country, that's a Lake Forest policeman. And so that's how closely they were involved. And having said that, that was a learning experience. I was amazed. I was aware, especially from some of the preparations that were done in advance of the Black Lives Matter rally from a couple of years ago. The public safety organizations around this area were essentially able to mobilize an army of several hundred officers, all coordinated and organized in an hour. And I think I certainly rest comfortably at home knowing that. These people are unbelievably professional. They are very well organized. They coordinate very closely among our immediate neighbors and then in the region. And you can't anticipate and stop every bad thing from happening. But I think we feel, at least in the city government and certainly among the staff, that we're very well protected. And I thank our chief, who I see back in the corner there, Chief Waldorf, for being a leader in all of that in the region. And we benefit from that. So, as I said, can't stop every imaginable bad thing from happening, but I think we're in a great spot here. And if I could leave with one thing, it's please lock your cars and don't leave anything visible in them. Those are crimes of opportunity, and I know it's inconvenient sometimes with the current way cars are, with the key fobs that float around from purse to coat to bedroom drawer to wherever the heck they end up. I know it's easier to just leave them in the car, but please don't do that. So anyway, that's.
Thank you. From our standpoint, the event in Highland Park was a catalyst of change for communities. I was in the street, of course, at the 4th of July in Lake Bluff, and I was looking at the amount of people we have in our town, and I cannot imagine what could have happened in our community as well. Public safety is on our mind more than ever. We must do everything we can to prevent such event to occur. We cannot deny it, but we need to do everything we can to have addressed issues prior to these events. We have now safety procedures prior to any event in our city. We make sure that things have been checked before this event to occur. As George said, the July 4th event has highlighted the level of cooperation we have between our police departments. Not only did we have a Lake Forest Police Department arrest a suspect, but we had both police forces in Highland Park helping the Highland Park Police Department to the extent that I was told that the FBI was actually impressed by the way we were able to cooperate to address the issue at hand. To this extent, I would also like to welcome our new Chief of Police, Matt Smirzinski. Matt. And Matt has been with the police department in Lake Bluff for the past 20 years and has grown through the ranks. And his right hand, Eric Gerke, as Deputy Chief of Police as well. So welcome.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am exhausted from trying to work my way around all this construction that's been happening between the city doing the whole project up on Northwestern, and we call it Burr Oak, but it's really on Northwestern and the whole area up there. Route 41 and Deer Path, which has been torn apart by multiple players over the last couple of years, and then all just the routine street resurfacing and other sort of lesser projects. But I'm looking forward to having this behind us. It's been amazing to watch on the Northwestern project. I know Alderman Gosh Garion has a ringside seat for this, but with his building up there. But it is amazing. I don't know. Do we have? There's a film, I think, or certainly photographs on the city's website of this. I want to say 820,000 gallon storm trap that we put in, which reminded me of an old Roman catacomb in Istanbul that I saw many years ago. I mean, it's just enormous. And but now we're getting close to the end. Everybody loves to joke about the pump house at 41 and Deer Path. Just for the record, it's not working yet. There is apparently a circuit board that has been delayed, and that's what's standing in between us and not having floods. And that should be taken care of by the end of the month, I'm told. But the paving work to redo Deer Path is going to start here in the next week or so. And same thing with up at Northwestern, and all of that should be buttoned up by Thanksgiving at the latest. So one silver lining for all that is our staff has gotten really good at applying for and succeeding in getting grant money for a lot of these projects. So the Northwestern project, we call Burr Oak, the storm trap, is being paid for 50% by the state of Illinois through a grant that we were able to receive. IDOT is actually doing all the work at 41 and Deer Path on the underpass. That's all not being paid for. I mean, it's being paid for by Lake Forest taxpayers, but indirectly. So that's actually not costing the city anything. The Commonwealth Edison Bridge replacement is a Commonwealth Edison project. Ironically, I think when they got in there, they found out that that bridge was built to last through the next apocalypse, and they probably didn't need to do it in the first place, which is a little frustrating, but they're going to finish that up here shortly. We've replaced the 2 bridges in downtown Lake Forest for the bike path this year. It's just been sort of organized mayhem. So next year is going to be much quieter. We're working on solidifying the gains, let's just say. But we'll continue over the years. Everything east of Green Bay Road runs to the lake through the ravines, and so we've been 1 or 2 a year repairing the ravine infrastructure, and that will continue. And those projects range anywhere from $500,000 to $1.5 million or even $2 million in some cases. We've got a couple of bridges on the east side of town that are going to be that are being designed. Replacements are being designed right now. So that's probably a 2024 or 2025 kind of a time frame. But the good news is the city is financially able to sustain all this, and especially with the newfound expertise in collecting grant money. We got we got about $4 million of grants this year, and we're on track to get another $3 or $4 million in the next couple of years. So that's become a significant source of revenue for us for these infrastructure projects. So hopefully you've all been receiving notifications as necessary about what's going on in your neighborhood, if there is anything. I think the staff has really redoubled their efforts to make sure that people at least know what's going on if there's going to be inconvenience. We will have a couple of complete closures of Deer Path. I think there's one weekend in November that we're targeting. So as I've been saying for a couple of years, it's probably best to just try not to go through there at all ever, if you can, until next year, because you never know what you're going to find. So. But it should all be buttoned up by Thanksgiving, and thank you all for your patience. It's been trying, and but I'm glad to say these are big projects. It's going to make our lives much better in the long run, and thank you for putting up with it.
Thank you. So similarly to Lake Forest, our focus is about infrastructure, stormwater, water treatment, sanitary waters, and it's all about bridges for us. Our main focus is the viaduct that is next to the fire station. If you see that picture, we are trying to create our own lake in Lake Bluff. Unfortunately, we cannot run kayak because you actually bump into the bridges now. This is actually important to us. This is the foundation infrastructure for Lake Bluff. We are engaged in phase 1 to create a plan to have a viaduct, a deep tunnel that will go from the viaduct all the way to the lake. That viaduct, that deep tunnel will get waters from East Terrace and North Terrace, that is west side of the train track, the Metro train track. It will also address water in East Lake Bluff. This is a big project. This is about $17 million. We are engaged on our first phase 1, that is the planning, and thank you for the county, Sandy Hart, to help us with this phase, and we're about to engage on phase 2, that is basically acquiring land and getting that deep tunnel to happen. This is a big deal for us. It will resolve stormwater in Lake Bluff. Similarly to Deer Path, this is the same extent of project. We received a grant from Senator Morrison to extend the bridge north of Lake Bluff on Green Bay, the bridge that basically is next to the Navy base. That will basically help pedestrian traffic from the medical school, for example, coming back to Lake Bluff. We also received a private donation to replace one of the pedestrian bridges on the East Sheridan Place ravine. That little bridge that is green, that is fun. When you run on it, it actually wobbles. It's all fun. We'll have a great bridge. We'll have a bridge that imitates, that it really replicates the current architecture that is historical to Lake Bluff with the bridge you can have on Ravine Road, actually. So it's a great improvement to our community as well. And we're considering a few other bridges, but everything in time, we're trying to recover from COVID in the first place. So I would like to say that 2 years ago, our concern was uncertainty from a financial standpoint. We were very careful. We had to delay a few key infrastructure projects. For example, the footbridge on McLaury, that is above 176, was one of these projects that got delayed, and we actually achieved that last year. Our village team did an amazing financial planning job. We were able to forecast, we were able to plan for what was for us extremely difficult time. I added to that graph a trend line. You can actually see that the trend line was going up, it dipped, and we were able to recover, okay? This is important. We were able to recover from that difficult event. We also managed to retain our AAA rating from Moody's. It's a good thing for us. And we're now back to business. And now we're back to achieving the key infrastructure projects we had in plan.
Well, similar to Lake Bluff, in 2020, we were just about to start our fiscal year, which is a May 1st beginning, so right in the teeth of the lockdowns. We went back to square one, sat in a room together, and did what I refer to, or created what I refer to as a doomsday budget. We were convinced that the entire real estate market was going to shut down, all kinds of bad things were going to happen, and it was going to, people were going to lose their jobs, and income or revenues were going to go down significantly. And so we budgeted for that, and lo and behold, the opposite happened. We actually ended up with a significant surplus, and actually that has now been repeated. The doomsday budget is long in the past, and we've had significant surpluses for the last 3 years. So that has part of what's enabled us to do all this infrastructure work that I was talking about a minute ago. The city of Lake Forest is in really, really strong financial condition. About 10 years ago, we reached the conclusion that we couldn't rely on the state for anything. And so we started doing planning as if we were not going to ever get any of the money that the state normally is responsible for sending our way, like our share of income taxes and our share of sales taxes, because those things had basically been impounded a couple of times in the early teens. So we revised our policy to have reserves. Our reserve policy had been 15% of a year's revenue. We raised that policy to 35%, and then later on concluded that probably wasn't even enough, so we've been actually running around 70%. So that allows us to do things. It was a bit controversial at the time because it's extremely conservative. It's almost aggressively conservative, but that allows us to do things like repair the north access road to the beach on the fly, without having a financial crisis. So things happen, bad things happen, surprises happen, and so we've been keeping with those. We brought the reserves down. They were almost 80% 2 years ago. We brought them down to about 70% again, I think 72. But we've recently had our AAA rating affirmed. We refinanced a number of bonds when rates were still low, saving literally millions of dollars over the life of these bonds. That game is over for the moment, but we're good. And our revenues, unlike a lot of communities around here, really don't depend on sales taxes, which is a good thing. Sales taxes notoriously are volatile. Virtually, I think 80% of our revenue comes from property taxes. So that's much less volatile. And I think you've all kind of realized or seen that property values have been holding very nicely. The transaction volumes, we have a chart, I think, that shows, there we go. So we have as you all probably know, we have a real estate transfer tax in Lake Forest. And that allows us to keep track of what's happening in the real estate market because every transaction gets recorded. So the top two lines on this chart are the last 2 years of transaction volumes. So we all of a sudden doubled in 2020 and 2021. 2022, or fiscal year 2023, which started in May, is the little line. It's a little hard to see, but it's sort of off to the left there, and it's tracking in terms of transaction volumes much more normally to prior years. That's an artifact, I think, of the fact that our inventory is quite low. We had a very large inventory before. We worked that down, and now it's quite tight. And also, I think interest rates have an impact on it. But the good news is, I guess it's a factor of the inventory that we have or don't have. Prices are seem to be holding up very well in the face of reduced volumes and higher interest rates. I like to say, we have the 4 S's here. We have schools, we have space, we have safety, and we have savings. The real estate taxes here, as everybody knows, are among the lowest anywhere in the Chicago metropolitan area on a rate basis. And it's a relatively good value living in Lake Forest. And if you don't have to commute 5 days a week to downtown Chicago, it's an awfully nice place to live, as I've certainly benefited from. So, but I think we're really in a pretty solid spot financially, and we've worked at it over the decades, as I mentioned, and it's bearing fruit. So,
Thank you. The story in Lake Bluff is resolutely a highly desirable place to live. We're experiencing a decreased real estate availability, minus 26%, with average sale prices up 37%. The story is people chose Lake Bluff to weather the pandemic. People stayed in Lake Bluff to work from home, and people like it. I see a lot of new faces in the street, a lot of smiles. People are there. That actually created a different issue for us. That is, I get a lot of emails about noise in the street, leaf blowers. People want these things out. People say, I'm working here, I'm on Zoom. I can't stand those things. So we're now working on this subject. It's a good thing for us. People like our community. Our focus is still diversification of housing types in Lake Bluff. We have very few options, and we have a very small community. We have only 4 square miles, and we're still trying to address that issue. That is, we need to have different opportunities for our residents. The only thing I can say is maybe more news on that for next year. Thank you.
Will you just hold on to it and talk a little bit about community life?
So community life is interesting in Lake Bluff. You might have received from the Village Hall a pamphlet describing the different events in Lake Bluff. If you have looked at that pamphlet closely, and if you have counted the farmers market, that is 43 events in Lake Bluff in between May and basically next week or this week. 43 events. That's a lot of block parties in front of the brewery, by the way. And and by the way, this is shameless, but next week we have our Ghost Walk. The History Museum would love to host you for this event. I will not be there, maybe. But this is basically Lake Bluff. This is Experience Life in Lake Bluff. This is who we are. We put a real emphasis on seeing each other, being with each other in the streets, and enjoying life in Lake Bluff.
Well, thank you. We are kind of winding down the season here. I think Joanna's running the car show on Sunday. We've got the tree lighting ceremony the day after Thanksgiving. There has been a consistent stream of community activities that continues to grow. I think the thing that bagpipes and bonfire was last weekend. I couldn't go, but I gathered the weather was perfect until it wasn't. But they got through everything before the rains came. The thing that's interesting about Lake Forest is we have this significant portfolio of sort of not-for-profit organizations that end up being the sponsors of a lot of our community activities, as opposed to relying strictly on the city for that. The city does its thing. We have the concerts in the square. We certainly work closely with the Friends of Park and Rec on their events. But we have things like Bagpipes and Bonfire, and all the events that are going on at the History Center, and all the events that go on at Gorton, and everything at Elliwa Farm. And you could fill up your entire social schedule with all the various events, most of which are sponsored by independent groups of citizens. And it's part of our culture. You know, the philanthropy and the community-wide organizing that people do to do good work around town is really extraordinary. One of the great things that we discovered when we sponsored the pop-up shop a couple of years ago was that a lot of these organizations, all the not-for-profits in town, really weren't talking to each other very much. They were sort of operating independently. And by having to work together to pull off the pop-up shop, they all kind of got to know each other, and they learned about each other, and they found all kinds of synergies between things they were doing. So now we have Ragdale and Citadel Theater collaborating on things. We have Ragdale and the History Center collaborating on things. We have Elliwa collaborating with the rec department, and all that is really sort of creating a new sort of vibrant sense of energy. And I hope we can sustain that. I'm sure we will, because I think everybody has discovered kind of how valuable it is. So it's a very unique thing about Lake Forest, and something that is sort of probably not understood unless you live here. But it's a town that is just filled with philanthropic and volunteer activity, all the way through the city government, and even the mayor. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments, Regis?
Yes, actually, one thing I should have said is these last 2 years have taught us that the vibrancy of our village is important, similarly to what you said. We did a lot of work. We put a real emphasis on having people being outside and be with each other, having the possibility to dine outside, to be in the street. And it was, I mean, I'm French, and coffees outside is a thing I love. People have discovered that. And this is an important thing, and we should keep that in both communities. It is a thing that basically keeps us as a community, keeps us as people, and makes us move forward, having the right discussions and having the right opportunity and investments in our communities.
And I would add to that and say that what we have found over the past 2.5 years is that the businesses have worked so well together in collaboration. And the kind of spirit that we have seen in everything that we have done and we have known through this time period has been extraordinary. And I wanted to do a shout out to both municipalities. You know, I'm looking at Drew and I'm looking at Dana and Jason over here, because the cooperation between the business community and the municipalities has been extraordinary. And to George's point about the collaboration of groups, Dana's even started a coalition so that we meet regularly and can all talk and compare notes, and there's some wonderful things that are coming down the pike next year too. So I just wanted to add my 2 cents, so to be so bold to do so. Are there any questions? Have any of you written anything on a card that you would like to send up here? All right, here's a question for both of you. How might the college better connect with both towns? We have a lot of great events. Do you each want to take a moment to answer that?
Well, I know the college has a new president, first woman president of Lake Forest College, Jill Barron, and I think there's even an event this weekend to celebrate that. I know the city over the years has utilized students from the college in all kinds of capacities, in tutoring and in internships at the city and at the police department and so forth. In terms of how the college could better connect, I think there's one obstacle that people don't really talk about that much here, and I've observed it over the years because I've always thought that this was something that needed to be developed more greatly. The kids aren't here very often. You know, they're not here for very long. And any of you who've had a kid in college, you realize they're home more than they're away. The school year is pretty short, it's intense, and they're very busy when they're there. So I think that's just a challenge we all have to recognize. It does seem like there could be more. I know there have been various seminars and events, and I know the college utilizes Gorton for a number of their events. I guess I would refer that question for long-term efforts to Jason and Dana. And I think it's something that's always on top of our list, and there's always more we can do. So not much of an answer, but we'll work on it.
Thank you. I had the chance to, during my professional activity, to have a lot of my colleagues were from Lake Forest College. And so I completely understand the tremendous economic value to what that college has to bring to our communities, to both our communities. And that being said and being serious, Lake Bluff also will be happy to host any event from Lake Forest College.
And I'm going to apologize in advance. We got quite a few questions here, and I'm going to, there are some that can be asked individually of the mayors or the city staff. I'm going to bring a couple to light here that might be of greater interest. One is regarding gun safety. Highland Park and Highwood have a ban on assault weapons. Is there anything on going forward in either of our municipalities?
We have not discussed this item in our council, but I believe this is at the forefront of our discussions. And it is an important subject, and we need to have a right discussion about it. From a personal standpoint, I think this is very important. We need to address that.
Okay.
This is something, this is not a new issue for us. When I was on the city council 7 or 8 years ago, there was a large discussion about this. The challenge is you can pass laws and ordinances. As a municipality, there's very little that we can actually do to actually follow through on that. So the question is, and it's a broader issue. How much should the city government, the city of Lake Forest as a city, engage and debate and have conflict over national issues, national political issues that really aren't where we really don't have much of an ability to impact them. So, and this goes beyond gun safety. That's just one of a whole litany of issues. In the world of social media, it's possible for very small groups of people to make a lot of noise and create a lot of conflict and anger and division. And we've experienced some of that in the last couple of years. So, long way around of saying this is not a new issue, but at the moment, frankly, that's one of the first, surprisingly, that may be the first specific question I've had on this really in the last year. So there, maybe people would like to change this, but the bottom line is there's not a big groundswell of discussion about this happening, and it's really not on our agenda at the moment. I do think it's a serious problem. I think that personally there's no reason to have the ability to buy a gun that's got a 50 bullet clip that comes with it as standard equipment. I mean, what are you going to do with that? But how does it really change? How would doing that actually make life better for people in Lake Forest? I mean, it's just an interesting question. If the community demands it, I think we will debate it. To date, that really hasn't happened.
And it's kind of a nice way to end this. The question is, there have been many successes highlighted. What do you see on the horizon that we should anticipate and prepare for? It's a stumper.
Well, from our standpoint, Lake Bluff, you saw the lake we're trying to build downtown. I think that lake will keep happening until we resolve it correctly. Our budget is about $11 million per year. This is $54 million for us. It is a real issue. It is really affecting the life of our residents. people cannot go to school, people cannot go to, safety cannot be assumed correctly, people cannot go to the hospital. I see that getting worse. We all saw what happened yesterday in Florida. It will happen in our communities as well. This is at the forefront of my thoughts. And so that between safety, following on assault weapons, we see a lot of people on July 4, we see a lot of people in our farmers market. These are the concerns for our community. We need to keep working every day to make our community better. We need to invest the money. We need to invest on the infrastructure. We need to put the right roads, the right bridges, the right infrastructure to be to help our community. And we all need to keep being together and having the right conversation, bringing the right consensus to continue living as a community.
Well, it would behoove me to mention stormwater. It's probably the number one sort of big issue that we continue to deal with. I think we've made really strong progress on that over the last couple of years. I think we'll see the benefits of that next year. But we'll continue. That's a work in progress, as I mentioned before. The ravines continue to need to be repaired. We've got stormwater pipes around town that aren't big enough still, and so that'll be an ongoing thing. I touched on before the large number of new residents that have moved into town. I think that's a huge opportunity, but it's also a risk, and it's something we have to be attentive to. I think we need to make sure we engage that group of people. I think people moved here because they see a wonderful place to live, but they need to really get embedded in the community. And as we all know, it's a much deeper portfolio of opportunities living here than just living here. There's so much to do. There's so much to get engaged in. There's so much talent. Let's make sure that all the organizations in town, the Chamber of Commerce, the Preservation Foundation, the Gorton, that there's outreach, and that these people are brought into the community in a very positive way.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your comprehensive and thoughtful presentation. I'm not alone in this room, just being very grateful for the communities that we have and for all of you who keep us safe in the corner there and govern us sitting up here and are involved in so many different ways. Thank you to all of you for what you do and how wonderful our community is.
And thank you for our community.